Let me tell you this terrifying story in his own words. My name is Faisal. I belong to the city of Larkana in Sindh. This incident took place in 2013. Back then, I used to narrate it as though it had happened to someone else. But today I understand, some events change a person from the inside. Quietly, slowly. We were two brothers. My older brother was 6 years older than me. He was married with 2 daughters, both young. One went to school, the other was still small enough to be held in arms. Our parents lived with us. Father had retired and spent most of his time sitting on a charpoy in the courtyard, reading the newspaper or silently watching the street outside. Mother's health had been poor for years, sometimes blood pressure, sometimes diabetes, sometimes breathing problems. So most of the household work was managed by my sister-in-law. I had just completed my education and was looking for a job. But the truth is, I was home most of the time. Our house was located in an ordinary neighborhood of Larkana. Not too wealthy, not too poor. Out front was a small lane where motorcycles, children, vegetable sellers, and milk vendors filled the air with their sounds all day long. Behind the house ran a narrow alley, barely 5 feet wide, passing between the boundary walls of 2 homes. Almost no one ever used it. Occasionally a child would come to retrieve a ball, or a cat would be spotted creeping along the top of the wall. That was all. Our house was divided into 2 sections. The front section had the drawing room, father's room, and my brother and sister-in-law's room. The back section had my room, a storage area, and the water pump. My room was directly adjacent to that back alley. If I opened the window, all I could see was a wall, and above it, just a thin sliver of sky. We had never experienced anything strange in that house. Not me, not my brother, not our parents. Though father did occasionally mention something. He said that one day, a neighbor uncle had told him he had seen someone passing through our back alley at night. The figure was unusually tall and moved in a peculiar way. Father always told the story with a laugh, and I would dismiss it as neighborhood gossip. The truth is, I simply did not believe in such things. Jinns, spirits, ghosts, these were fine as stories, nothing more. Once, when an acquaintance told me he had seen something strange in his home, I laughed at him. I said, when it's dark and your mind is tired, everything feels like an illusion. Today, I find myself astonished at who I used to be. It was the month of November. Larkana doesn't get very harsh winters, but that year there was a strange coldness in the air. The daytime sun felt pleasant, but as evening fell, a kind of hollow chill would set in. The leaves on the trees rustled with a faint sound, and the nights felt quieter than usual, more than they should have been. The day it happened was completely ordinary. After Fajr prayer, I woke up. Mother called out that the milk vendor had come. I went to the door, took the milk, came back, and lay down again. A little while later, breakfast, my sister-in-law had made parathas. Father was buried in the newspaper as usual. My brother was getting ready for the office. I told him I was going to meet a friend, maybe get a lead on a job interview. He just nodded. He was always wrapped up in his own affairs. I spent most of the day outside. Met a friend, went to 2 places. Something came of one, nothing of the other. When I returned in the evening, children were playing cricket in the street. A ball rolled to our door. I picked it up and threw it back. My sister-in-law called out that tea was getting cold. Everything was completely normal. So normal that even remembering that day, it feels like someone else's life. At night we had dinner, watched TV for a while, then everyone went to their rooms. I came to my room and lay down. I pulled the blanket over myself because of the cold. Somewhere in the distance, a dog was barking, but even that sound faded away after a while. I fell asleep. Around 1 o'clock in the morning, a sound broke my sleep. At first I couldn't tell whether I was dreaming or awake. The sound was like someone hammering a nail into a wall. Thack, 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 at a steady rhythm. I shifted, closed my eyes. I told myself it must be some work being done in a neighboring house. But immediately the thought came, who has a carpenter working at this hour? The sound continued. The room was dark. Only a faint glow from the sky filtered in through the window. I sat up. There was a mild unease in my chest, but no real fear. I told myself it was probably nothing. I got up and left the room, gently opening the courtyard door so as not to wake anyone. The courtyard was pitch dark. The moment I stepped outside, the sound stopped. I stood there. A few seconds, maybe a minute. Silence so complete I could hear my own breathing. I thought, all right, it was nothing. I turned to go back inside, and then felt a strange, nameless restlessness. No particular thought, just a question with no answer. I went back to the room, was about to lie down, and the sound came again. But this time it was different. To this day I cannot properly describe what it sounded like. Only this, it was not coming from the wall, or the floor, or any single place. It was as if it had dissolved into the air itself. My sleep was gone. My heart rate climbed. I got up, quietly shut my door, stepped back into the courtyard, and again, silence. But this time, on my way to the courtyard, I realized the sound was not coming from inside the house. It was coming from behind. From the direction of the back alley. My heart began pounding hard. But I still told myself I was being brave. Let me just go see what it is. I moved toward the back of the house. Complete darkness. No torch, no phone light. I felt my way to the far corner where the water pump stood, the spot where you could see both the alley and the back of the courtyard. But there was nothing there. The silence was so deep my ears had begun to ring with a faint, high-pitched tone. I decided to walk through the alley and come out the other side. Maybe I'd see something from there. I moved forward, and when I reached the middle of that narrow passage, I saw what has never left my dream since. There was a woman standing in front of me. To this day, I cannot say with certainty whether what followed lasted a single moment or spread across many minutes, because after that instant, my sense of time simply ceased to function. The moment my eyes found her, the ground disappeared from beneath my feet. And I do not mean that in a dramatic way. There was no sudden scream, no violent movement. She was standing completely still, as if she had always been there, and I had stumbled into her world by mistake. The alley was narrow. So narrow that if I spread both arms, I could touch both walls. Above, the sky was not visible, only the darkness between the walls and the smell of damp stone. And in that darkness, she stood. Her height was unnatural, so tall that her head seemed to extend above the top of the wall. But I could not clearly tell whether there even was a head. When my eyes went to where her face should have been, my mind went blank. There was no face. No nose, no mouth, no features, just a flat, smooth surface, like stone, and set within it 2 eyes. Those eyes I will never forget. They were glowing, but not because of any light. It was as if something was moving inside them. They were looking at me, directly, deliberately, and I felt that those eyes were not merely eyes. They were thinking. Her hands, God is my witness, her hands were so long they touched the ground. The fingers were not distinct, just long, shapeless extensions lying flat against the floor of the alley, as though they were steadying her from below. My entire body went numb in one instant. I could not run. I could not scream. My throat had closed shut. My heart was pounding so violently I felt certain it would burst. Breath was entering my lungs but getting trapped on the way back out. I tried to convince myself this was an illusion, a trick of the eyes, the mind playing games in the dark. But for however long I stood there thinking all of this, she did not move a single inch. She just stood there. The silence was so profound I could hear the sound of my own eyelids blinking. Somewhere far away a dog barked, but the sound came as if from another world entirely. Then my legs suddenly found life. Perhaps at the extreme edge of terror, the body makes one last attempt. I decided to spin around and run. I turned, and my heart slammed into my chest. She was in front of me. There. In the direction I was trying to escape toward. My mind had stopped working. I couldn't understand how she had moved, or perhaps she had not moved at all. Perhaps she had always been everywhere at once. My breathing became frantic. My chest heaved as though I had been running for minutes. A buzzing began in my ears. My legs were trembling. My knees were giving way. I shut my eyes. In that moment, I thought of my mother, my father's quiet face, my brother's laughter, my sister-in-law's voice, the giggling of the little girls. Everything came at once, like a final frame of life. I gathered every ounce of strength to call the Adhan aloud. My lips moved, my tongue stirred, but no sound came out. The words began to echo inside me instead. My breathing was ragged. My heartbeat rang in my ears. And then I felt her coming closer. My eyes were still shut, but the sensation was undeniable, as if the air pressure had shifted. As if the alley had grown narrower. As if the darkness had thickened. My entire body was soaked in sweat. Despite the cold, the dampness was ice against my back. I wanted to sink to the ground, to lie down, for any of this to simply end. Then, silence. No pressure. No presence. No sensation. I slowly opened my eyes. The alley was empty. She was gone. The walls were there. The ground was there. The darkness was there. But she was not. I did not pause for a single breath. I ran with everything I had. I felt certain something was behind me, though I never looked back. My legs stumbled. My breath broke apart. But I did not stop. I ran into my room, slammed the door, bolted it, and slid down the wall until I was sitting on the floor. My heart was still wild. My hands were shaking. My eyes were open wide in the dark. I lay awake the rest of the night. Every time sleep crept close, it snapped away. Every sound made me flinch. Only when the Fajr Adhan rang out did my eyes finally close, as if my body had simply surrendered. When I woke, my head was splitting. There was no strength left in my body. I felt feverish. My mother, father, brother, and sister-in-law were all standing in the room. Someone was giving me water. Someone placed a hand on my forehead. I tried to explain what had happened. But mid-sentence, my mind would close, words would scatter. I felt as though I wasn't fully present in my own body. That was the moment I first understood. What I had seen was not just the fear of one night. It had stayed with me. The days that followed, my life moved as if it had been shifted onto a different track. I lay in bed, but only in body. My mind wandered elsewhere. Mother kept asking if I could hear her. I would nod, though her voice reached me as if through water. Father stood silent. His silence held both questions and fear, though he said nothing. My brother called the neighborhood doctor, who arrived within minutes. He checked my fever, felt my pulse, shone a light in my eyes. He said there was a fever, likely severe anxiety. Severe anxiety. Hearing those words, I laughed somewhere inside. If only it had been just anxiety. Medicine was given. I took it. My body went quiet for a while. But the restlessness inside my chest did not ease, as if something had settled there and was rising and falling with every breath. When night came, my heart sank. The moment the sun began to set, time itself seemed to slow. Evening prayers rang out, the neighborhood sounds continued, children played, all of it the same as always. But not for me. My brother said, "Sleep in my room tonight. Don't be alone." I agreed immediately. That night I lay on a mattress on the floor of his room. My sister-in-law left the light on, perhaps because of how I looked. I closed my eyes, but sleep did not come. Sometime deep in the night, perhaps 2 or 3 in the morning, I jolted upright. Everyone was asleep. The light was dim. I felt as though someone had spoken my name. The voice wasn't clear, just a feeling, as if something was calling me. My heart began hammering again. I pulled the blanket over myself and lay there, telling myself over and over that there was nothing there. But the next day was the same. And the day after. During the day I felt marginally better. As soon as night fell, my heart would sink. I could not be alone. If I stepped into the courtyard, I felt certain something was standing behind me. If I sat in my room, the walls seemed to be drawing closer. The mere thought of that back alley sent a cold wave through my entire body. Within days, everyone could see the change. I spoke less. I barely ate. Dark circles appeared beneath my eyes. My mother's health worsened. She began crying frequently. Father quietly said to my brother one day, "Speak to a religious scholar." First came a local cleric. He recited verses over water and breathed prayers over me. I felt a moment of calm, but as soon as night arrived, everything returned. Then a second scholar came. Then a third. One said it was the evil eye. Another said it was the effect of shock. But whatever had settled inside me was not going anywhere. Sometimes, in the most absolute silence, I would hear that sound again. Not a knock, but that shapeless, blurred sound, as if something very far away was reminding me that it had not left. My dreams had changed. When I slept, I would find myself in that same alley. The woman never appeared directly, but the feeling was always there, that she was close. I would wake screaming, drenched in sweat, breathless. Finally, my brother, through some contact, found a religious scholar who was known to understand such matters. He did not agree easily, but seeing my brother's persistence and my mother's condition, he agreed to come. He arrived at midday. The sun was bright, but inside the house there was a strange coldness. He was middle-aged, with streaks of white in his beard and deep, quiet eyes. He looked at me once, just once, and then said to my father, "Your son is not alone." Hearing those words, something broke inside me. He said, "We will begin after Maghrib." And for the first time, upon hearing those words, I was afraid with my whole open heart. Maghrib came. The lights were turned on. Everyone gathered in the courtyard. The scholar began to recite. His voice at first was calm and steady, but as time passed, the air grew heavier. I felt pressure in my chest. My head began to spin. Then, from my own mouth, came a sound that was not mine. I heard it and trembled from the inside. My hands twisted. My fingers locked. I felt as though I was still inside my own body, but someone else was in control. The scholar's voice rose. The recitations grew louder, and I began to laugh, a laugh I had never laughed in my life. My sister-in-law was weeping. My mother cried out. My father pressed himself against the wall and sat down. Then a voice came from my mouth. "This house is ours. It has been for years." The scholar stopped. He took a long, slow breath. Then he said, "Be silent." The room went still. Only the sound of breathing, which no longer felt like mine. A long while later, everything slowly stilled. I collapsed as if unconscious. When I opened my eyes, the light of Fajr was spreading across the courtyard. My body was broken, but my heart, strangely, was light. The scholar was sitting nearby. He said only this: "There are jinns who have lived in this house for years, particularly in that back section. Do not go there." After that day, my health slowly began to return. Sleep came back. The fever lifted. But one thing changed forever. I never set foot near that back alley again. And even today, when the cold wind of November blows, I feel it. Some things truly do see a person. And once they have, that person is never quite the same again.